And there was a big effort then around shifting our community from managing homelessness to ending it, which is something people still talk about, right? How do you do less of the immediate things and invest more in the solutions? And so San Jose had a plan to end homelessness. The county had a different plan to end homelessness. Nonprofits had different plans. And so we said, well, let's all do together, have one plan to end homelessness for the whole region that we all agree on, we all adopt. We led the facilitation of that, which was the community plan to end homelessness in 2015. And that has been endorsed by all the major jurisdictions in the county. We did a proof of concept around chronic homelessness, said we're going to house 1,000 people, show you that it works. 86% of everybody that was housed is, housed after 12 months. Did a huge cost study that said this is how much money we can save if we do more of this. And so really a lot of talking around why this is beneficial for cities. And really we've tried to use data and information and also having people involved with Destination Home that are well respected and influential and able to say, hey, this is what we're supporting. Can you support this with us? We did a cost of homelessness study a couple of years ago called Home Not Found that showed us that we spend about $500 million a year on services to homeless folks while they're homeless. And of that number, 10% of the homeless population is half of that money every year, right? So a couple thousand people are costing, $250 million. That's crazy, right?
These are the most complex cost studies that have been done, the most complete, the Los Angeles and Santa Clara County. And when we looked at the cost distribution among folks who'd been homeless, we found this hockey stick pattern with most people not having very much cost, and then a small number, 10%, accounting for over half of public costs for homelessness. What we're doing is focusing on these most expensive, high-need people. What we found was that average costs were about $60,000 a person when people were homeless, and they go up above $1 million a person. So there are some people with very, very high costs. When people are housed, you have savings of about $19,000, $20,000 a year per person. For these very high need people, it's cheaper to house them than to leave them homeless.
Silicon Valley Triage tool is really an algorithm that uses predictive analysis that says, okay, if you have these flags, you are right now frequent high cost user, or you will be if you don't get housed, right? Because of the pattern of system usage. And there's a screening that happens, an identification. They say, okay, again, Jen, you've been in the ER 300 times. You've been in inpatient psych. You've been arrested. Like your service utilization, you're one of the higher service utilizers in the county. So you get referred into this Pay for Success program, which is really a housing first program. Mm-hmm. And then as folks are housed, all the service utilization is really dropping off. Mm-hmm.
One thing that's been really successful in our veterans campaign is we have a landlord incentive program. We've worked it out so that if the landlord is willing to rent to a vet and they'll enter into a year lease, then we will do a landlord incentive payment. I think it's like $1,500. It's like for every lease that they do. So, people go into the landlord business to make money. It's their business, and so they're driven by money. It's having somebody to manage the landlord incentive program, having folks who are dedicated to looking for housing. And it's being willing to house people where the housing is available. Are there opportunities in other cities in the county with more vacancy? Once you find a group of landlords, because there aren't that many of them, you have to build the relationship. It's like fund development. You have to build the relationships with landlords too. Incentivize them to participate, and then have staff who stick with the clients and can respond to their concerns. We've funded units that are still to be built. We have a few projects that are just about to open, a couple that have already opened, so in terms of physical structure. And what we know is that we have to build more because the existing housing stock isn't enough. So what we typically find in development is that about 35% of the funds for an affordable housing development come from the local community in some way. And the rest of the funds are leveraged from either the federal government or the state, and a lot of it through tax credit incentives. And so for that 35% though, that's what we really need to be concerned about as a community. It could come from private philanthropy. More likely it comes from some government source, a housing trust fund that we've put aside. There was a local sales tax measure, so we increased sales tax by like half a cent 3 or 4 years ago. So we've been able to invest a lot of that money into permanent supportive housing and services for the homeless.
We have on our ballot Measure A, which is a $950 million bond for affordable housing with a heavy allocation for the type of housing that solves homelessness, extremely low income housing, because we don't have hardly any of it in our community. Most communities don't. So how do we create more ELI housing? How do we create more supportive housing? Well, that's by giving the local jurisdiction a larger pot of money to use as leverage match, right, to get projects going. LA is doing a housing bond like Santa Clara County. San Francisco is doing something. Alameda and San Mateo counties all have housing bonds on their ballot.
We have a facilities and fleet department. They work closely with us to identify county-owned property where we might be able to build housing. Our budget includes funding for a position in their department, a realtor position to help us vet properties. So we're trying to identify every possible piece of land, building that's appropriate to be acquired, houses that don't make sense for many other things.
But whose responsibility is it really to solve it? Well, I always say, well, where's the safety net? The safety net is here at the county, and our county has done an incredible job of saying, yep, we get it. These are our folks, no matter what. Why don't we serve them more efficiently, better outcomes, heal them, right? And ease the burden on the community.
We know that it takes the whole community. We also know that we have a leadership responsibility to end homelessness, and we take that role pretty seriously. We haven't always, it took time to get to this place. It took the right people in the right leadership positions at the right time to get us where we are. I think that if we hadn't had the right person in the destination home executive director role, so Jennifer, if we hadn't had her in this convener, advocate, public-private partnership role, if we hadn't had the role of the director of now Office of Supportive Housing, if we hadn't had some key leaders who made those roles happen, if we hadn't had the county COO and the right person in the role of the director of the Department of Housing for the city of San Jose, all of this would have been a lot harder and come a lot slower. But for the county leadership in particular, having Key and Gary Graves in their positions willing to take a chance, and then 5 supervisors who are all really committed to this issue, these things wouldn't have been possible. Our county has made a really large investment in the issue of homelessness and affordable housing. It's one of the top 3 issues for our county board of supervisors right now.
What can a city do if they don't really have the county as aggressively pursuing it?
What they do is they start to get the city's buy-in, or the county's buy-in.
So the city's job would be like, hey, county.
Yeah, we need you. And, sometimes there's tension between cities and the county because the county crosses everyone's jurisdiction. They control most of the time land use. As we look at available parcels of land, if we can't do the type of housing, and if the city isn't on board with helping flow these things through their planning commissions and their planning departments and all the different levels of approval and permitting and zoning, then we're kind of out of luck.
And who approves the housing is the people that are in our planning and in our housing departments, but ultimately it's our elected officials. So do our communities need to understand the benefits of housing, and do we need to make sure that we're talking a lot about why this is helpful and a good answer? Of course. But then we also need courageous, committed people serving in elected office, or you have rampant homelessness. It is too big.
I think one of the things Santa Clara has done pretty well is create a center of gravity for caring about it. The Destination Home Jennifer's group pulls together foundations, the county, the housing authority, the nonprofit providers. They've become a powerful point of consensus, and they represent a lot of leadership from the county.